You've definitely heard all the buzz around AI, right?
Absolutely. It's everywhere.
But what if I told you that, according to this recent Carnegie Mellon study people were discussing on Reddit, AI agents can actually be wrong? Get this, a staggering 70% of the time.
70%. Wow.
Yeah, when doing complex multi-step tasks. It's a really striking figure, isn't it?
It really is. That kind of error rate.
Yeah.
Well, it immediately makes you question things.
Exactly. Like, how can something supposedly revolutionary be so, well, flawed when you give it a complex job?
That's the core question, yeah.
And that's exactly why we've put together this deep dive just for you. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we unpack a whole stack of your sources to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
And today, it's the world of AI agents. Fascinating, sometimes.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
Totally. We're going to explore what these digital assistants really are, why they sometimes fail so spectacularly, and maybe more importantly, where the tech is actually headed, especially with these small language models, SLMs.
Right. And we've gathered quite a mix of stuff. Insights from that lively Reddit discussion.
Yeah, the real-world gripes.
Exactly. Plus an in-depth ethical analysis from Smithos, some cutting-edge research from RCIV on the SLMs,
Okay.
and also some comprehensive guides on AI automation and open source frameworks. So a pretty rich set of perspectives.
Definitely sounds like it. So, okay, let's circle back to that 70% figure. What's the absolute key thing to understand about that number? The nuance maybe the average person might miss.
Well, the critical point is context. The 70-ish% wrong rate, it applies specifically to complex multi-step agent tasks.
Okay, so not just asking it a simple question.
No, exactly. Think more like, go through all my emails, find everyone who said X, and then check if they are also Y. That kind of chain of actions.
Right, that makes sense. So it's not about simple Q&A accuracy, although...
yeah, accuracy issues exist there too, let's be clear. But the challenge just multiplies with that kind of complexity.
That distinction really does make a huge difference. And those Reddit discussions, they really hammered home the real-world frustrations, didn't they? Especially from developers.
Oh, absolutely. You had users saying things like, so many hallucinations, so little trust.
Yeah, I saw that one.
And another described the AI coding tab completions, this was great, as the worst part, like having a very stupid person constantly interrupting with very stupid ideas.
Okay, I can relate. I was trying to automate something pretty simple myself the other day with one of these tools, and even for what felt like a straightforward task, I hit similar walls. Just weird suggestions, stuff that didn't quite work. It really brings that 70% figure to life.
It does. And the core issue, as lots of users pointed out, is that these suggestions often look plausible.
Right, at first glance.
Exactly. So they lead you down these unproductive paths before you suddenly realize, wait, this is built on a shitty foundation, as one person put it.
And it's not just code, is it? People mentioned other examples.
No, definitely not. Things like Google Search AI confidently saying, dogs can eat chocolate.
Which they definitely cannot.
Right. Or struggling with basic math. Someone mentioned getting 7.5 as the answer to 2 plus 2.
Okay, yeah. So what is all this frustration from developers to just regular users really tell us about where AI is actually at, fundamentally?
I think it tells us they're essentially pattern matching machines. They're looking for patterns. They're not thinking or reasoning in the human sense.
Like a superpowered autocorrect.
Exactly. A big and complex autocorrect on steroids. Or, my favorites from the thread, spicy autocorrect or drunk autocorrect.
Spicy autocorrect. I like that.
Yeah. They generate text that looks right superficially, basically to get their reward in the training process, even if it's factually wrong or just makes no sense. And what's really fascinating, or maybe worrying, is the disconnect between that reality and the pressure from industry.
How so? Well,
you hear about executives, managers, basing future plans on these complex multi-step AI tasks working flawlessly.
Right. Assuming that 70% error rate just isn't real.
Or that it'll vanish overnight. Some reports even mentioned punishing employees who aren't on board or who have low acceptance rates for AI suggestions.
Wow. That sounds like that classic analogy, doesn't it? Trying to use AI, this new hammer, to, I don't know, dig a hole.
Exactly, because it's the snazzy new tool they've invested in, even if it's the wrong tool for that specific job.
So the takeaway isn't that AI is useless, but...
Not at all. But it's a tool with specific strengths and weaknesses. Right now, it seems best used as an assistant, kept in a tight loop with a human.
So we can catch the errors early.
Precisely. As one Redditor put it really well, the future should probably be human-centric work with agent assistance, not fully autonomous agents, just getting a bit of human oversight.
That makes a lot of sense. But the challenge is they don't just stop at performance, do they?
No, not at all.
As these agents get more autonomous, they raise some really deep questions that go way beyond efficiency. They get into ethics.
That's right. The ethical landscape is huge.
So moving into that ethical territory, how does something like privacy get amplified when we're talking about autonomous systems?
Well, the core issue is the sheer volume of data. AI's hunger for data is immense, and it's forcing, really, a legal paradigm shift.
How do you mean?
Autonomous agents just collect massive amounts of personal data. Think about autonomous cars.
Oh, yeah.
They're gathering location data, driving patterns, maybe even in-cabin video feeds.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And that 2021 Tesla incident where employees supposedly shared sensitive customer videos.
Yeah, that really highlighted the risks, didn't it? Data misuse.
Exactly. So it makes things like privacy by design absolutely critical. Not just a nice to have, but a legal and ethical necessity to try and prevent these crises of trust and misuse before they happen. We see regulations like GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California trying to address this.
That's a crucial point. And then there's the accountability question. If an AI messes up, who's actually responsible?
Ah, the blame game.
Yeah. And it's not hypothetical, is it? That awful 2018 self-driving Uber crash in Arizona
Tragic, yeah.
that killed a pedestrian, it sparked a massive debate about exactly this. Whose fault is it?
And the real challenge here isn't just who to blame, but how our legal systems, which are built around human actions and intentions,
Right.
how they grapple with decisions made by these complex, often opaque, non-human systems.
So traditional ideas like negligence or product liability, they don't quite fit.
They don't map neatly onto errors made by AI, no. It's tricky. There's even debate around concepts like electronic personhood. For really advanced AI, though, that's still quite theoretical. So what this pushes us towards is a future where explainable AI becomes fundamental, not just for developers debugging things.
But for legal and ethical reasons, too.
Exactly. For governance, you see things like IE guidelines, the EU's proposed AI Act. They're pushing for documentation, for audit trails, so we can actually understand why an AI made a certain decision. Transparency is key.
Okay, so accountability is one piece. What about actually teaching machines to make moral choices in the first place?
Yeah, that's another huge challenge. Developers are trying, using established ethical frameworks.
Like what?
Well, there's utilitarianism, for example. The idea is to maximize overall well-being.
The classic trolley problem type scenario.
Right.
Swerve the self-driving car to hit one person to save 5.
Kind of, yeah. But the massive challenge there is defining and quantifying overall well-being, right? And deciding whose well-being counts more in complex, messy, real-world situations. It's incredibly difficult.
You can imagine. What else?
Then you have deontological ethics. This focuses on following strict moral rules or duties.
So like an AI must always protect its passengers, no matter what.
Potentially, yes. But the difficulty there is codifying every possible rule and figuring out what to do when rules inevitably conflict.
Right.
And a third approach is virtue ethics. This tries to cultivate moral character traits. So you might design an AI doctor to be empathetic.
Empathetic AI. How do you even measure that?
Exactly. Measuring abstract virtues and ensuring consistent moral character across all sorts of different situations is really hard.
So these frameworks exist, but implementing them.
It's complex. You can try top-down approaches like explicit rules, think Asimov's laws, though they're more fiction than reality. Or bottom-up, where the AI learns from examples. Often it's a hybrid.
But ultimately,
Meaningful human control remains crucial. And having things like ethical review boards to evaluate these systems before deployment, plus ongoing monitoring.
like Stuart Russell said.
Yeah, the AI researcher Stuart Russell put it well. The challenge is to create AI systems that are powerful enough to be useful, but also constrained enough to be controllable and aligned with human values. That sums it up nicely.
Beyond the AI's own actions, there's that other big societal impact. Jobs.
Ah, yes. Employment.
It feels like a classic double-edged sword, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. On one side, you can see potential job displacement. Autonomous vehicles could replace drivers. AI chatbots might reduce the need for some call center operators.
That's the fear, yeah.
But on the other hand, new roles are being created. Data scientists, AI ethicists, robotics engineers. These jobs didn't really exist in the same way not long ago.
So the labor market is shifting rather than just shrinking.
It seems that way. Routine, predictable tasks are the most likely to be automated. This actually increases the premium on skills that are uniquely human.
Like creativity, empathy.
Exactly. Creativity, empathy, complex problem solving, critical thinking, negotiation, collaboration. Think about a skilled negotiator reading subtle cues, or a therapist building an empathetic connection. AI might handle the scheduling or note-taking.
Freeing up humans for the higher value stuff.
Potentially, yes. But preparing for this future is key. It means continuous learning, really emphasizing those soft skills. And there's a responsibility for governments and corporations too, retraining programs, maybe exploring ideas like universal basic income.
Okay, so we've covered the flaws, the ethical minefields, the job impacts. But now, here's where I think it gets really interesting. Despite all those challenges, there's this emerging perspective arguing that small language models are the future of agentic AI.
Ah, the SLMs. Yes,
Yeah.
this is a really important development.
And it's not just presented as a technical tweak, is it? The research I saw frames it as a fundamental shift towards something more sustainable, more economical.
That's the argument, yeah.
Yeah.
First, maybe we should quickly define SLM versus LLM, just to be clear.
Good idea.
So an SLM, a small language model, is basically defined as a language model that can physically fit onto a common consumer device like your phone or laptop.
Okay.
And run fast enough with low enough latency to be practical for handling the requests of a single user. In 2025 terms, that generally means models under, say, 10 billion parameters.
Right. And an LLM, large language model?
Is basically anything bigger than that. The
Yes.
ones that typically need those huge centralized cloud data centers to run.
Got it. So what are the core arguments for these smaller models, especially for AI agents?
Well, the first big one, let's call it V1, is that they are becoming principally sufficiently powerful.
Meaning they're catching up. They can actually do the job.
Exactly. SLMs are catching up to LLMs remarkably fast. You look at examples like Microsoft's Phi 2 model. It's only 2.7 billion parameters, but it performs on par with models having 30 billion parameters, and it's like 15 times faster.
Wow, okay.
Or Phi 3, small 7 billion parameters, matching 70 billion parameter models on language tasks and coding. And even more striking, maybe, there's DeepSeek R1 Distill Qwen 7B.
Catch a game.
Yeah. But this 7 billion parameter model apparently outperforms big proprietary ones like Claude 3.5 Sonnet and even GPT-4o on reasoning benchmarks.
Outperformed GPT-4o, really?
In reasoning tasks, according to that research, yes.
Wow.
And Salesforce has one, XLM28B, that surpasses both GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 in tool calling, which is crucial for agents interacting with other software.
So the takeaway is, size isn't everything.
Pretty much. The idea is capability, not the parameter count, is the binding constraint. It's about what the model can do effectively for the specific agent task, not just how massive it is.
Okay, that's compelling. What else makes SLMs attractive?
Well, points V2 and V3 in the research are that they are inherently more suitable and economical.
Economical, how?
Yeah.
Cheaper to run.
Massively cheaper, potentially. Serving a 7 billion SLM can be 10 to 30 times cheaper than running a huge 70 to 175 billion LLM.
10 to 30 times.
Yeah, in terms of latency, the energy used, the raw computation needed FLOPs, and fine-tuning them.
Creating them for specific tasks.
Right. That takes maybe only a few GPU hours instead of weeks and weeks for an LLM.
That's a huge difference in cost and speed.
It is. And it enables different deployment models, too. Edge deployment.
Meaning running locally.
Exactly. Running the SLM right there on your laptop or phone using consumer-grade GPUs like with NVIDIA's ChatRTX platform.
Which means lower latency.
Lower latency, definitely. And potentially stronger data control because your data doesn't necessarily have to leave your device.
That addresses some of the privacy concerns we talked about earlier.
It could, yeah. Plus, SLMs are often more parameter efficient. A higher proportion of their brain power actually contributes to the output, and they lend themselves to modular architectures.
Like Lego blocks.
Kind of. Building systems by combining several small, specialized expert SLMs can be cheaper, faster to debug, and easier to deploy than relying on one giant monolithic LLM.
And thinking about agents specifically,
Yeah.
they often do repetitive tasks.
Exactly. A crucial point is narrow functionality. AI agents often only need a limited subset of what a giant LLM can do.
They don't need to write poetry if they're just processing invoices.
Precisely. A fine-tuned SLM can handle those narrow, repetitive, well-scoped, often non-conversational tasks very effectively, and potentially with fewer of those weird hallucinatory mistakes in formatting that can mess up interactions with code or APIs.
That makes sense.
And agent systems can naturally be heterogeneous anyway.
Meaning they use a mix.
Yeah, use an LLM for the really complex, high-level planning or reasoning, but then use several smaller, faster SLMs for the subordinate, simpler tasks.
Like a manager delegating to specialists.
A good analogy. And finally, the interactions the agent has that generates really valuable, high-quality data.
Data about what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. Which can then be fed back to fine-tune those specialized SLMs, creating this virtuous cycle of continuous improvement.
So, if SLMs have all these advantages, why are LLMs still so dominant?
Well, partly it's down to the massive upfront investment poured into LLMs already.
Industry inertia.
Yeah, and industry inertia. Also, many of the current benchmarks used to compare models focus on generalist, broad knowledge tasks.
Which naturally favors the giant LLMs.
Right. They might not accurately reflect performance on the specific, narrower tasks that agents actually perform, but the tech is moving fast, costs are falling.
And there are even methods now to convert existing agents.
Yes, there's apparently a step-by-step algorithm outline for converting LLM-based agents over to SLM-based ones. It involves collecting data from the LLM agent, curating it, clustering similar interactions, and then fine-tuning SLMs on those specific clusters.
And the potential savings look significant.
Early estimates suggest they could be huge. For popular open-source agents like MetaGPT, maybe 60% of its LLM calls could be replaced by SLMs. OpenOperator, maybe 40%. Cradle, potentially 70%.
Wow. So this really could be a major shift in how agentic AI is built and deployed. More sustainable, cheaper, more tailored.
That's the vision, yeah. Shifting the whole paradigm.
Okay, we've gone deep into the weeds of agent flaws, ethics, and the potential future with SLMs. But listeners might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but what does this mean for me, for my business, like today?
Right. Let's bring it home.
Let's talk about actually using this stuff. Because despite all the complexities and that scary 70% number for some tasks, AI automation is a powerful tool you can leverage right now.
Absolutely. And sometimes the real ROI, the return on investment, isn't just obvious cost cutting, it's hidden.
How so?
It's in unlocking completely new operational efficiencies, allowing businesses to pivot, to adapt much faster than before, turning fixed costs, like maybe staffing for peak demand, into variable, scalable assets by using AI.
That's a great point. Beyond that, there are the more direct benefits, right?
Yeah.
Time and cost savings.
Definitely. Reducing manual work is huge. It saves employee time, cuts labor costs. You mentioned Zappos using AI for delivery queries earlier.
Yeah, and Warby Parker for returns.
Exactly. AI can often do these tasks for a fraction of the cost of a human agent, and it works 247 without getting tired.
Which leads to scalability, too.
Effortless scalability. An insurer can process a huge influx of seasonal claims using AI without hiring loads of temporary staff.
Yeah.
You can genuinely do more with the same resources.
Plus, accuracy and consistency. You mentioned AI doesn't get fatigued.
Right, which generally leads to fewer mistakes on repetitive tasks. Think about AI processing invoices. It can flag anomalies or potential errors much more reliably than a person scanning hundreds of them.
And if it is uncertain.
Good systems allow it to escalate that decision to a human, so you get the consistency but still have human judgment for the tricky cases.
All of this should translate to faster responses, better customer satisfaction.
Definitely. AI agents respond instantly any time of day. Spotify, apparently, uses AI to spot app performance issues before users complain and alerts them proactively. That builds loyalty.
So the numbers back this up. The productivity gains.
They seem to. Accenture found businesses using AI-driven operations saw, on average, 2.4x higher productivity.
2.4 times. That's significant.
It is. And Deloitte reported that project for a telecom company where using generative AI for IT support cut the ticket volume by 55%.
55% reduction in IT tickets. Wow.
So adopting this early really does seem to offer a competitive advantage. The prediction is that by 2025, something like 80% of companies will have adopted or plan to adopt AI-powered chatbots for customer service.
80%. Okay, so it's becoming mainstream fast. Let's make it even more concrete. What are some killer use cases people are implementing right now?
Okay, customer service is a big one. Instant answers to common questions, ticket triage routing the query to the right person or department,
handling returns or refunds processing.
Exactly. Even proactive outreach, maybe checking in after a purchase, and crucially, facilitating that seamless handoff to a human agent when needed.
Makes sense. What about marketing and sales?
Huge potential there, too. Lead qualification using chatbots on your website, they act like 247 AI sales reps, filtering prospects.
Can AI actually make sales calls?
Well, tools like Go High Level's AI Phone Caller are trying that, handling initial outreach or follow-ups. Then there's content creation. HubSpot uses AI to generate personalized email copy or blog post ideas.
And recommendations, like Amazon?
The classic example, Amazon's AI recommendations reportedly drive something like 35% of its revenue. That's massive. Plus, using AI to analyze campaign performance and optimize ad spend.
Okay, so CS, marketing, sales.
Yeah.
What about internal operations?
Big impact there, too. IT help desks, like that Deloitte example with the 55% ticket reduction.
Right.
Data analysis and reporting AI can crunch numbers and generate summaries much faster. Finance and accounting. Expensify uses AI to scan receipts and automate expense reports, cutting processing time way down.
And even monitoring operations or helping with decisions?
Yeah, monitoring systems for anomalies, predicting maintenance needs, things like that.
Okay, so the potential is clear. But how does someone listening, maybe running a small business or a team, actually build one of these agents, especially if they don't code?
Great question. And the good news is you don't need to be a coder these days. The key is to start small and focused.
Don't try to boil the ocean.
Exactly. Look for tasks that are repetitive, data-driven, where there are bottlenecks, or where you need really fast, maybe 247 responses. Have a clear goal for what you want the AI to achieve.
Okay, find the right task. Then what?
Then you choose a no-code platform. There are lots of great options now.
I bet.
Well, there's a NaN. It's open source, really flexible. It lets you connect AI steps with logical branching and has pre-built integrations for things like OpenAI, Anthropic, etc.
Okay, N8N. What else?
Zapier is super popular, known for its simplicity. It connects thousands of different apps, over 5,000, I think. Makes it easy to trigger workflows.
Zapier, right. Heard of that.
There's Flowise AI, which is more of a visual builder specifically for creating chatbots and AI agents. And Microsoft Power Automate is a strong contender if you're already heavily invested in the Microsoft ecosystem. It has its own AI builder component.
So several options depending on your needs and tech stack. Once you pick a tool, how do you design the actual workflow?
It usually follows a pattern.
Yeah.
First, you need a trigger what starts the process. Maybe a new email arrives or someone fills out a web form.
Okay, trigger.
Then you gather the input data needed, maybe the text of the email or the for submission details.
Got it.
Next comes the AI processing step. This is where you send the data to an AI model like GPT or Claude with a carefully crafted prompt telling it what to do. Analyze this email, summarize this text, classify this customer query.
Prompting is key, I imagine.
Absolutely critical. Then you might have some decision logic. If the AI classifies the query as urgent, do X. If not, do Y.
Makes sense.
And finally, you take action. Send an email, update a spreadsheet, create a task in your project management tool, whatever the goal is.
Trigger, input, AI processing, logic, action.
That's the basic flow. And then, crucially, you test it. Test it thoroughly. Start with a pilot, maybe just internally. See what works, what doesn't. Refine the prompts, tweak the logic.
Iterate.
Iterate, exactly. Keep a human in the loop initially to oversee it. And then, once you're confident, you can scale it up. But remember, ongoing maintenance and always think about security and privacy.
Especially with sensitive data.
Definitely. Check if your chosen AI provider lets you opt out of having your data used for their model training, especially if it's customer info or confidential business data.
That's really practical advice. And while there are more advanced code-based tools,
Like LangChain or AutoGPT, yeah.
Yeah.
They offer maximum flexibility for developers.
The main message is you don't necessarily need them to get started.
Not at all. You really don't need to use code to achieve fantastic results. These no-code platforms are incredibly powerful now and can deliver significant automation wins for almost anyone.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground.
We certainly have. From the surprising flaws and ethical tangles of AI agents
Right, that 70% figure.
to the really exciting potential of these small language models, and then bringing it right down to the practical steps for automating your own business tasks.
It feels like this deep dive really shows AI isn't some magic wand, is it?
Not at all.
But it's also not universally useless. despite the hype and the criticism.
Exactly. It's a tool, a rapidly evolving tool. And its effectiveness really hinges on how we use it.
How precisely we define its job.
And how thoughtfully we weave it into our existing ways of working, keeping humans central. That 70% wrong statistic for complex autonomous tasks really just underscores that need for careful oversight, for strategic deployment, not just letting it run wild.
So thinking about all this,
Yeah.
what's the final takeaway for you, the listener?
Well, as these AI agents get more sophisticated, and they will, they're going to increasingly blur those lines, aren't they, between what a human can do and what a machine can do.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What does it even mean to be well-informed anymore, when so much of the information we see might be generated by systems that are just pattern matching?
Or systems that prioritize output that looks right over what is right, that might even lie, in a sense, to produce the most statistically probable rewarding output.
Yeah. So how will you, listening now, adapt your own critical thinking, your own process for validating information, especially in a world where that spicy autocorrect is scaling up to make autonomous decisions?
It's a huge question. Maybe the biggest challenge isn't just building smarter AI.
But becoming smarter users, smarter overseers of AI.
Exactly. That feels like the real task ahead for all of us.